A woman was abducted from Orlando, Florida on January 26, 2006. There are no signs of her whereabouts and only a grainy surveillance photo of an unidentified person of interest. After the police department botched the investigation, her family sued the Orlando Police Department to obtain the records on her case. Now, the family and their private investigator are the only ones investigating her disappearance. Welcome to Without a Trace. I'm your host, Jolynn. Every file holds a mystery. Every story deserves to be heard. This is Jennifer's story. Jennifer Kesse was born on May 20th, 1981 in New Jersey. She is described as the kind of person who lights up any room she walks into. Jennifer grew up in Tampa, and after graduating from Vivian Gaither High School, she moved to Orlando to begin college at the University of Central Florida. Jennifer was attracted to Orlando because of its large hospitality field, so when she graduated from UCF in 2003 with a degree in financing, she decided to stay in the area. She accepted a job at a timeshare company in Ocoee, Florida, where she was promoted twice within her first year of employment. At the time of her disappearance, she was working as a finance manager. Jennifer purchased a condo in a tougher part of the city that was slowly being revitalized. She moved into the Mosaic at Millennia, which was located near a high-end shopping mall. The location was perfect for Jennifer as she adored shopping. When she moved in, the complex was still under construction, and it wasn't uncommon for contractors and construction workers to be seen throughout the complex. The contractors would come in and out of Jennifer's condo doing work, and Jennifer had told family members on several occasions that the construction workers constantly catcalled, whistled at, and harassed her. This made the safety-vigilant Jennifer nervous. Many years earlier, when her parents, Drew and Joyce, still lived in New Jersey, they were held at gunpoint. This led them to teaching both of their children that their personal safety was of the utmost importance. Because safety was so important to Jennifer, she constantly checked in with her family back home in Tampa. She was known to check in with her friends and family on a daily basis, sometimes even checking in multiple times a day. When she walked from the parking lot to her apartment after work, she was always on the phone with someone, just in case. At the time of her disappearance, Jennifer was dating Rob Allen. The couple met a year earlier at a bar while Rob was in town. The two had just returned from a romantic island vacation the day before Jennifer disappeared. She stayed the evening at Rob's house, then drove straight to work in Orlando the next day. After leaving work, Jennifer followed her usual routine of calling friends and family on the way home from work. She left work around 6 p.m. on January 23rd and spoke to her father while driving the approximate 15-minute drive home. She later spoke to her boyfriend on the phone around 10 p.m. Rob would later tell authorities there was nothing off about the conversation, and Jennifer had only mentioned that she was tired. The next morning, Rob found it odd when Jennifer didn't text or call him before leaving work, something she was in the habit of doing. When he tried calling her, his calls went straight to voicemail. He chalked it up to a meeting she had mentioned to him. At 11 a.m., alarmed by Jennifer's uncharacteristic no-call, no-show, her employer contacted her parents, who began the drive from Tampa to Orlando. On the way, they called to ask the property manager of her condominium to check her home with a spare key. He reports that everything appears normal inside and that her car is missing outside. Around 3 p.m. that afternoon, Jennifer's parents and brother arrive at her apartment. They find evidence that she had been home that morning, as a wet towel and clothes laid out suggested she had showered, dressed, and prepared for work that morning. Her family decided to call the police, but since Jennifer wasn't an adult, the police initially believed she may have left on her own accord. By 5 p.m. that evening, friends and family began to saturate the area with flyers. The police sent a detective to her home to begin interrogations and organize search parties on foot, horseback, boat, helicopter, car, and ATV. As is customary, investigators first questioned Jennifer's immediate family and close friends. Her ex-boyfriend, recently upset and wishing to get back with her, was interrogated, but it was concluded that he had nothing to do with her abduction. Her current boyfriend was questioned, but his alibi checked out, eliminating him as a suspect. Investigators attempted to speak with the construction workers at Jennifer's condo. However, many of the laborers on site were non-English speaking. Due to the language barrier, investigators were unable to interrogate many of them. No other leads regarding them were discovered. Detectives then turned their focus to her place of employment and began questioning her coworkers. Her computer was taken for forensic exam, which revealed that a manager where she worked desired a relationship with her, but she had refused his advances because she opposed workplace relationships. Detectives interviewed this individual multiple times, but ultimately ruled him out as a suspect. On Thursday, January 26th, a tenant of a nearby apartment complex informed police that Jennifer's car had sat abandoned in front of their apartment for several days. Investigators were excited to learn that several hidden cameras at the apartments recorded the part of the lot where the car had been parked, as well as the exit. The footage showed an unidentified person of interest dropping Jennifer's car off at approximately noon on the day she went missing. None of her friends or family recognized the person, whose physical features were not clear in the video. Investigators were disheartened to find that the best video capture of this suspect in 3 separate snapshots was obscured by the complex's fencing. The FBI was called in to help determine the person's size and gender, but could only say that the person stood between 5 feet 3 inches tall and 5 feet 5 inches tall. NASA also enhanced the video to help identify the suspect, but still no leads came. One journalist called the suspect the luckiest person of interest ever. A search dog tracked a scent that led from Jennifer's parked car back to her apartment complex, prompting detectives to believe that the suspect might have returned to her apartment's parking lot after abandoning the car. No evidence was found along the route. A forensic examination of the car yielded little in the way of evidence, only a latent print and a small DNA fiber, leaving investigators to deduce that the car had been wiped down. Several valuables were left in the car, implying that robbery was not a motive. However, items known to be missing from the car include Jennifer's cell phone, her iPod, her keys, her purse, her briefcase, and the outfit she was wearing. Authorities were unable to ping her cell phone, and its power has remained off, and her bank account has not been used since her disappearance. With no sign of forced entry or a struggle, investigators initially theorized that on the morning of January 24th, Jennifer left her apartment for work and locked her front door, only to be abducted at some point while walking toward or getting into her car. In May of 2007, Jennifer's employer offered a $1 million reward for information leading to her whereabouts, with a July 4th deadline and the stipulation that she had to be alive. The reward was never claimed. A $5,000 reward for information leading to the whereabouts of her remains is available through Central Florida Crime Line. As of June 10, 2010, the FBI has taken over the case from the Orlando Police Department. In 2018, Jennifer's parents filed a lawsuit against Orlando Police Department to gain access to police records on the case. The lawsuit was settled in March 2019, allowing the family to access the 16,000 pages of records. In reviewing the pages of records, new evidence arose that suggested a violent struggle took place on the front hood of Jennifer's car. Her dad, Drew, described, quote, "It looked like someone was thrown down on top of the hood, arms spread out, and then dragged back almost like off the hood, to a point where you can almost see fingers down the hood." Mike, a former federal agent and a private investigator hired by the family, added, quote, "The photos look suspicious and show what appears to be a hand mark going down across the hood." Drew says the family is not happy with how the case was handled, stating the department botched the investigation from the moment an officer was sent out when calls were first made about Jennifer's disappearance. Drew stated, quote, "We went up to the condo and they sent an officer out. Officer came in, looked around for about 30 seconds and said, 'She probably had a fight with her boyfriend. She'll be back.' And he walked out." In December 2022, it was reported that the investigation into Jennifer's disappearance had been turned over to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement Cold Case Unit. The team intends to interview people Jennifer's law enforcement team has already identified as possible suspects or people who may have valuable information, and to retest evidence that Jennifer's family says has never been retested. In April 2024, Sunshine State Sonar announced that they searched Lake Fisher in Orange County after following up on a tip from 2019, which stated a resident witnessed a pickup truck back up to the lake, dump a 6 to 8 foot piece of rolled up carpet into the lake before fleeing. The sonar company searched the entire lake with the exception of vegetated areas. They caught several anomalies and sent divers down to check, but nothing of significance was found. Eventually, they planned to send divers to search the vegetation in the lake. Jennifer is still considered missing and endangered. She remains on the FBI's missing list. As a result of Jennifer's disappearance, the Florida House of Representatives unanimously passed Senate Bill 502, otherwise known as the Jennifer, Kesse, and Tiffany Sessions Missing Persons Act, an act aimed at improving the way missing persons cases are handled in Florida. Tiffany Sessions was born on October 29, 1968, in Tampa, Florida. At the time of her disappearance, she was attending the University of Florida in Gainesville to obtain her bachelor's in business. On the afternoon of February 9, 1989, Tiffany told her roommate that she was going out for a walk. She left her apartment between 4 and 5 p.m., leaving her wallet, identification, and keys in the apartment. After 5 hours, when Tiffany still had not returned, her roommate alerted Tiffany's mother that her daughter was missing. The police did not initially handle the disappearance as a crime because a crime scene had not been found, and there was no sign that Tiffany left her apartment's parking lot, and there were no signs of a struggle. People who were in the area have stated someone fitting Tiffany's description was seen speaking to individuals sitting inside a vehicle. Eyewitnesses were uncertain whether the woman entered the vehicle, and authorities have never confirmed that the individual was Tiffany. Michael Knickerbocker was initially considered a suspect. When he was in prison serving 5 consecutive life sentences, he reportedly told his fellow inmates that he had murdered Tiffany. He had also said he had chained Tiffany to a tree and discarded her body close to Fort Myers in the river. Because he was not living in Gainesville at the time of Tiffany's disappearance, the feasibility of his involvement has been questioned. As of 2014, police believe that the now deceased and convicted serial killer, Paul Rolls, was responsible for Tiffany's disappearance and murder. He was sentenced to life in prison for murder in 1976, but was released from custody after 9 years. At the time Tiffany disappeared, Paul had been working for a construction-related company near the path where Tiffany was last seen. Paul did not show up for work the day she went missing. Authorities discovered an address book that Paul had with information on people he had murdered. Notably, the book contained a notion number 2-9-89, number 2. This is believed to refer to Tiffany's date of disappearance and to identify her as his second victim. The FBI has said the search for Tiffany is the largest in Florida's history, but despite this, Tiffany's whereabouts remain a mystery. After hearing about the disappearances of Tiffany and Jennifer, it's no wonder the House of Representatives unanimously passed an act to improve the way missing persons cases are handled. Both women disappeared under unusual circumstances, but their cases were pushed off, resulting in pertinent information being pushed off. Had both cases been investigated properly from the start, investigators may have found answers. Thank you for listening to Without a Trace with your host, Jillian. I hope you enjoyed our deep dive into Jennifer's disappearance. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please subscribe and follow Without a Trace on social media. And join me next week as I dive into another case.